you're good. That's right.
Okay, so emotions help us communicate our internal states. So in summary, emotions are functional and adaptive. They are good. I see a lot of kids who come in and they don't want to talk about the bad emotions. So they'll only talk about happy and excited, and they have lumped mad, scared into the, no, I never feel that way, because it's bad if I feel that way. And so what we really want everyone, and I think we grow up, we probably were kids who felt that way too. So we want everyone to understand emotions are good, but they really need to be regulated. So this gets complicated because emotional regulation, self-control, those kinds of things, that's sort of the job of childhood. And so I talk with parents all the time. We know when our kid is supposed to talk, and we know about when our child is supposed to walk. But like, when is our child supposed to be able to take someone else's perspective? When are they supposed to like refrain from acting on impulse? Those are not like, oh, that's 1 year, that's when they're supposed to do that. Those are not as clear. So behavior in young childhood is complicated because emotional dysregulation is appropriate at some in that early childhood period. Okay, I wrote up there. Most of us know that 3-year-old brains are not ready to read, but we don't always understand that a 3-year-old brain is also not ready to control an impulse or a strong emotion. Okay, so that should just be the first thing that we kind of come to the table with. All right, so self-control, defined it as the ability to control strong emotions and stop ourselves from doing something that's not allowed. This development starts at birth, and it's learned through interactions with peers and through support of caregivers. So what this is saying is that most children, I use the term typically developing, are going to learn these things just by interacting with their environment, okay? If they're in a safe and supportive one, okay? So that's typical development. It's important, so emotional regulation is important because many studies have found that this predicts your academic performance. It predicts later outcomes in life, and sometimes even beyond your IQ, or things that we traditionally think, like, I've got to get this kid reading by kindergarten, I've got to get this kid doing this by kindergarten. Really, like, this preschool goal is this emotional regulation. Okay, so I told you what typical development, kind of how this happens. So preschool competency. So in that preschool time, most typically developing children will develop emotional and behavioral self-regulation. Most will have an emerging conscience about inhibiting behavior, following rules, managing negative emotions. Most could generate hypothetical alternatives for a situation. So can your 4-year-old answer the question, what would have been a better choice in that situation? Okay? Or what could you try next time? Most will have a basic understanding of the impact of their behavior on others. So that question that, like, how do you think that made him feel? That is a good one to kind of assess. Are you developing these skills? Can you do that? Now, when it's not typical, these, the first category before the space, these are some diagnoses that kids will get when there is something that's impairing them from meeting these milestones. Now, I will say, the first set are not necessarily associated with emotional dysregulation or disruptive behavior. So for example, I diagnose autism spectrum disorders. Some people will assume that having disruptive behavior is part of that, but it's not necessarily. It can be associated. So the second set after the space, these are diagnoses that you might see or have heard of, and the core of these diagnoses is disruptive behavior, okay? So receptive and expressive language impairment, when we're not understanding or able to express our needs, that can be associated with a lot of disruptive behavior. Autism spectrum disorders, because there may be sensory or restricted interests that child wants to pursue, when they're not allowed to do those things, that could lead to disruptive behavior. ADHD can be associated. Anxiety can show up as irritability a lot. Sensory processing disorder, and global developmental delay. One that I didn't put on there is trauma. So I read through this today and I'm like, I didn't put kids who are mistreated, that could certainly be a diagnosis on there that could be associated. But then disruptive behavior, NOS, is kind of a vague diagnosis that we'll use when a child is really young, but they're showing atypical behavioral disruption. Oppositional defiant disorder and disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, DMDD. Raise your hand if you've heard of that. It's pretty new with the new DSM. This came about when they found that lots of children, young children, were being diagnosed with bipolar, and it was not quite the most appropriate diagnosis, so this came about because of that. I don't like to spend a lot of time on diagnosis because intervention is probably the most important piece, but I like to say that there are a lot of reasons that a child may not develop social emotional regulation. Okay, so these are my favorites, and this is kind of what I'll be talking about today. I do a therapy called Parent-Child Interaction Therapy, or PCIT. I'm going to give lots of info from that therapy. It's 14 weeks. It's behavioral therapy. Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child by John Gottman is a book that I meant to bring, but I keep it in my nightstand because it's so like I need that book personally every day. So that is an excellent resource. Treating Explosive Children by Ross Green. That is the therapist book, and then the Explosive Child is the parent version. It has a lot of good theories and tips in there. The Whole Brain Child by Daniel Siegel, currently reading. Not sure yet. I can't present on it yet, but I really like it. It talks a lot about brain research and getting the way we talk to kids that will help them use emotional moments to integrate different parts of their brain. So to get their left side to talk to their right side, or to get the base of their brain to use the front part of their brain, their frontal lobe. So that book is so far pretty good. So in all your spare time, just go read all those books. These are my memes about how we don't really have a lot of time to read all those books. So like all the Pinterest moms are making their own soap, and I'm like, everybody, survived the day, and then this little hand back. I can relate to that. So I know we don't have time. This is my job, and I don't always have time to keep up with the latest book. Daniel Siegel's book's been out for a while. Probably should have read it by now. But so this presentation will serve as a little bit from each of my favorites, and it may help you decide, I think I need to pursue that parent-child interaction therapy, or, I don't know about that Explosive Child book, but the Raising Emotionally Intelligent Children, that sounds better. So maybe it'll help you, or maybe it'll just be your cliff notes and you'll be done with it, okay? All right, so Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child. So this is John Gottman. Okay, so his book starts out by telling us what the common pitfalls that we fall into and how we react to kids' behavior. And so there are these different parenting styles. So heads up, what I'm going to talk about, we have all done these mistakes, okay? So he's not saying that everyone gets it right every time, but what he's talking about is if you respond chronically to your child this way, it can have a negative consequence, okay? So the dismissing parent, it's okay, you're fine, it's not a big deal. I put these stereotyped kind of responses here for each parenting style. So the dismissing parent is not intentionally negative. This may be a parent who ignores their child's emotions, feels that they're maybe trivial, shows little interest when their child's trying to tell them about their emotions, but it might be because it makes the parent anxious. It might be because the parent is uncomfortable, annoyed, or overwhelmed, and the parent may be unsure what to do. So this could be a parent who just continues to try and distract from the conversation, so some distraction is okay. But if we're consistently uncomfortable with the emotion, so this would be the parent when the child's talking to them, no, you're fine, it's not a big deal. This, if you've ever had a relationship with someone where you've tried to explain to them on an adult level how you're feeling, and they're like, it's not a big deal, settle down. Like, I don't like that. And so it's not, we want to make kids feel acknowledged, okay? So the effects that this can have on children is they learn their feelings are wrong or inappropriate or not valid, that something is wrong with them due to the way they feel. They also may have difficulty controlling their emotions. So I would use the example of, Kim, you're gonna know a little bit about this, but my husband, we go to church, he's a pastor, and I hate being late. And so we have 3 kids to get ready, and sometimes he leaves early. And so when I say to him, oh, we're gonna be late again, I can't get this, I don't know why this keeps happening. And he says, it's not a big deal, it's no big deal. That makes me feel like there's something wrong with me for being upset that we're consistently late, right? So I've talked to him about that. Don't say it's not a big deal. I would rather you respond with, yeah, this is stressful. I'll get the baby ready next time, right? Great. Okay. So this is the dismissing kind of style. It doesn't go well in any relationship. The disapproving parent. This would be the one that quit that, dry it up, rub some dirt on it. So it's a little bit more of, it has a little more negative connotation. The dismissing parent may come from a very good place. No, sweetie, you're okay. The disapproving parent, the focus is on the behavior that the child's showing, so quit that crying, not the emotion. So I know you're sad. And so they may believe that children must be emotionally tough for survival and that negative emotions are a waste of time or a sign of weakness. Okay, so again, we've all done this sometimes. And so the effects on the child are the same as the dismissing parent. No one gets it right every time. I can think of plenty of times that I have said these things. When your child falls down and they might be hurt and you might feel a little bit of anxiety, how many times have you said, you're okay, right? Instead of, oh my goodness, you fell, are you okay? A question. And so that's where I think sometimes the dismissing parent comes out of a little bit of my own anxiety. I want it to be okay, so I'm just going to speak that into you. You're okay. All right, so then there's the laissez-faire parent. And so this parent accepts all emotional expression from the child. It's all good. And offers comfort when they experience negative emotions, right? And so maybe we're hugging and coddling the child who's slapping us in the face. I know, sweetie. Okay, and so this type of parenting does not necessarily set a limit on, okay, this is a boundary that was crossed, and it can also be associated with a parenting style that wants to be the child's friend. So my goal is for you to like me. The effect on a child, they still don't learn how to regulate their emotions. They have trouble concentrating on learning a new skill. They seek a lot of reassurance because they're used to getting that. They have a harder time making and keeping friends because they don't understand social cues and they don't understand their role in a conflict. And that's where not setting the boundary is. If you're always told that everything is fine, then everything must be someone else's fault. So that's kind of the risk of that. So what Gottman wants people to do and what his research has found to be lead to the best outcomes for kids is if you are the emotion coach. So his whole book is based on emotion coaching, okay? First part of the book makes you realize all the mistakes you've made, and then he's like, okay, here's what you need to try and do. So the emotion coach actually values negative emotions and tries to stay patient to understand them. And the emotion coach listens and empathizes and tries to offer some guidance. They set limits on acceptable expression of emotion, so there's a consequence for your behavior, but not your emotion. The effects that the research has found: kids learn to trust their emotions. There's not something wrong with me if I feel that way. It helps them assess my situation. It helps them solve problems. It helps them have higher self-esteem. This is the one I love. They communicate more openly with their parent. So you can see if you're always dismissed or disapproved, you're going to stop communicating, right? Because it's not rewarding. And what do we want? By the time our child is a teenager, we want those open lines of communication. So if no other reason, the emotion coach keeps your child talking to you, okay? Which can be really valuable. Okay, so then he gives 5 steps. I love it. It sounds like a Facebook post, 5 easy steps to make this thing happen. So he does have 5 steps. So 5 steps to becoming an emotion coach. The part of this book that spoke to me the most was realizing that your child's negative emotion is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to have intimacy and connection with them. rather than viewing it, he wants you to shift from viewing their emotion as a real bummer for your day, like, man, your tantrum is really bringing me down, to, okay, this is an opportunity for us to like get closer, okay? And so what he wants you to do, step one, become aware of the child's emotion. So you first just notice that the kid is bothered or upset by something. And I'm using the example of when they have to leave the house and go to the babysitter's while you go to work. So first just notice they're upset. Then recognize the emotion as an opportunity for intimacy and teaching. So this does take a few extra seconds of your day, but I think you make up for it because the tantrum doesn't last so long. That's my hope, is that you put the work in on the forefront and then you're not dealing with the tantrum. So you say something, simply ask or bring attention to the emotion, ask why they feel that way. I go back and forth on using questions with kids when they're emotional. So you'll see in the next thing I talk about how questions can sometimes overwhelm. But so I changed the example. So I see you're really upset, tell me why. Because I feel like when they're really upset, they may not respond very well to, why, what's wrong, what's the problem? And so I see you're really upset, tell me why. And then you kind of like make time. So you listen empathetically and you validate their feelings. So listen to the reason why the child. So whatever level they can express, and it may be one word, you may just have to infer how they feel if we've got real language delays or a younger child. So let's say that the kiddo said, I don't like it when you leave, I don't know when you're coming back, or something like that. So you don't like it, I literally just repeat it back, not like a question, I just say it back. Oh, okay, I get it. You don't like it because you don't know if I'm coming back. And then you empathize. That empathy, I used to get upset too when my mom, would go to work when I was little. I remember that feeling, right? And so I have found in my work that an empathetic statement off the bat will take it. I always tell kids to picture that they have a thermometer. A 5 is furious, or a 5 is frantic, whatever. And a 1 is calm. I find that an empathetic statement will usually get me from a 5 to a 4, and then I've got a more reasonable child. Whereas if I start with a, sweetie, it's gonna be fine, we do this every day. Gasoline on the fire, okay? And it's just such an instinct to say those things. But so saying, I get it, I used to get that feeling too. Okay, so empathy. De-escalates. Help the child find words to label the emotion they're having. So when you're repeating back, again, give them the emotion words. We're teaching the skill they're lacking, which is maybe emotional vocabulary. Okay, so I think you feel scared when I leave because you worry I won't come back on time. Okay, so now they have identified this feeling, okay? Maybe the next time they'll say those words instead of throw the fit. So then, step 5, you have to set limits and explore strategies. So you're either going to be saying ideas for what we can do, and that really helps an overwhelmed child, is if you say, we can do this or this. You're also setting limits by saying, I'm still going to go to work, right? I'm not going to be, maybe the laissez-faire parent would say, my kid's upset, I'm not coming in today, right? Okay, that's not setting good limits, you're going to lose your job. But so this would be where you set limits to how long you're going to talk about it. So like this example, I'm so glad you told me that. I can't be late for my meeting, but would you like to take something that reminds you of me? Or would you like me to call when I'm on my way to get you? Sometimes again, questions, that would be a lot for a little brain to take in. So I might say like, I'm glad you told me that. I can't be late. You can take something that reminds you of me. You can take blankie, or I can call you when I'm on my way, right? Or both, whatever. But so this is where you come up with ideas, and some part of our culture will say, you're giving into that child, right? And I don't know why we do that. We're teaching a skill. So, and we're not giving in, we're teaching them to think of ways to solve a problem. Okay, so then, also, let's say a line was crossed in the fit. Let's say they took their cereal bowl and threw it across the table. There's milk and cereal everywhere. I'm going to use the emotion word again because I value his emotion. It's okay to